right. Good afternoon, everyone. Today is SIG Auth meeting for May 1st, 2019. All right, sorry. Feature freeze yesterday. Does anyone have anything specific to say? What all did we get in?
I just wanted to let people know a couple other things I was looking to do got pushed out by some of the extensions work that was happening. I see later on Patrick was asking about some of the beta stuff for dynamic audit. So there are things we're still working on, but as far as like what's targeting 115, I didn't see anything major coming in for SIG Auth. So if you were targeting something for 115 and it didn't make it, you need to request an exception and copy SIG Auth and SIG release and kind of describe what you're wanting to do and why it's worth getting in late. And we'll take a look at those if you have those.
Cool. Guess we can continue on to the discussion topics because I don't see other items in the list. I think CJ, were you the one who added this call?
No, I think you said my name, but I can't hear you very well. Can you hear me?
I can hear you. Do I just need to talk louder?
Did you say my name? Give me a thumbs up or something.
I did.
Okay. Yeah, this poll is fairly small, but my intent was at a higher level to not be making these product security committee decisions in the like shady back room. You know, some things we do handle privately, but defining our process is not something that we should be handling privately. So this specifically was about, we've had several recent disclosures where right now our process basically says if we get an email, if we get a disclosure, we're going to handle it in private. If it's low, we can slow down. But by the letter of the law, we're supposed to be doing everything in private. We've sort of made a decision that some lows or mediums we've fixed out in the open and gotten more eyes on the fixes as opposed to trying to keep everything in the private repo. I just wanted to get that down on paper so that we're actually following the rules that we have set out for ourselves. And then along with the changes to like handling mediums and below, something that requires heavy user interaction, I was thinking that maybe we want to give the fixed leads some leeway to say we might just send out an email very quickly to warn people not to engage in a very specific user interaction until we have a fix. So I wanted to get thoughts on that and wanted to, in general, figure out if this is the right place, if SIG Auth is the right place to discuss PSC stuff.
There's a security discuss mailing list that we should probably start a thread on. I think that's officially where we talk about like security policies and things like that. A lot of the same people are probably on there, but there are likely people on that list that are not here. So I think that the user interaction bit is a good point, especially if there's like a really clear mitigation or thing to avoid. Yeah, letting people know, hey, don't run this command or don't run this against untrusted containers or something like that could be useful. Another dimension of the CVSS stuff is availability. Like there are quite a few ways that an authenticated user with some level of permissions could be disruptive. Not that they could escalate permissions or not that they could compromise data integrity, but they could flood certain types of requests or be disruptive. And so kind of taking the known level of isolation and denial of service protection and saying, was a particular thing that was just disclosed, even if it, like the availability on some PVSS score, if that maps to other ways that a similarly permissioned user could already affect availability, like I don't necessarily know that we need to trigger the full private release. So it might be worth adding a paragraph or a sentence about availability metric. It's tough, especially when there are existing like known issues or ways that authenticated users could be disruptive, and then trying to map that to like, well, here's another way they could be disruptive. Do we like have an all hands alert private release process to fix this thing that is equivalent in nature to something that is already like, yep, if you're running a cluster, you have to protect against this yourself, kinds of things.
I think one of the challenges there is we haven't managed to write up or publish any sort of threat model. So the idea of like, what are the known issues that people need to protect against is not well defined.
I thought that was part of the bug bounty and security audit. So, something like that would come out for security auditors and bug bounty people to evaluate vulnerabilities against it. Did that happen? Maybe Aaron would know.
For the bug bounty, I think we ended up settling on fairly fuzzy guidelines because we sort of just decided it was too hard to really write the full detailed threat model. And none of the efforts to do so have led anywhere. I don't know about the security audit if there's some like more concrete guidelines that have come out of that.
Okay. Clayton has a really old doc that was pretty reasonable, in my opinion. Does anybody remember that doc? I can paste it into the chat. I think Clayton did an initial pass at trying to sketch a threat model. However, I think it's probably something that would be useful to have somewhere in documentation. So I don't really know how the best way to get that done is, though.
Can you put it in the agenda notes instead of chat, because chat disappears?
Yeah, sure.
Thanks. Yeah, so I would probably kick this to the discuss thread, maybe summarize the stuff we talked about here, and see if we can invite some more feedback, and if there was threat model stuff that could help inform this. So we could be really clear about, like, here's the things that we claim the current policies and protections actually protect against. And so if some of those claimed things are able to be circumvented, that's much more compelling to try to fix privately. If we say X, Y, and Z are not protected from, you have to put other protections in place, and then someone discovers a way, like, oh my goodness, here's another way you can trigger that same effect. Like, okay, we'll fix it, but it's already known.
It goes in the bucket of other, like, let's keep fixing this general problem.
Yeah. But yeah, being clear about where the lines currently are and what people should expect to be protected from is probably an important prereq to drawing any kind of clear lines here.
Yeah, I was hoping to get the perspective of like people on the distributors list. I know there's been pushback in general. They would rather we handle everything in private, you know, leave that for later. But yeah, hopefully the security discussion will be a good place to get that feedback.
Yeah. And you can copy the SIG Auth list as well, just to get good visibility to those conversation.
All right, I think we're ready to move on to the node scope daemon set discussion. I think that was started last or 2 weeks ago. The kept up. I don't know what you guys felt like was left off last time.
Tim, did you want to summarize this, or was
Hi, Ian.
Oh,
hi.
I didn't see you were on the call. Great.
Oh yeah, I'm here. So I think we follow up the suggestion given by 2 weeks ago. I did update the use case, and considering currently not all the daemon sets their permission is a subset of Kubernetes permission, and the proposed solution here will make our authorization and automation controller module more tangling. So we decided within Google, we will run this daemon set using Kubernetes credential for short-term plan. And in the long plan, we should continue the discussion in the CAP to figure out a better solution to do the authorization for daemon sets.
Yeah, we brainstormed a couple ideas. I think that we should follow up. I'm not sure if everybody who was interested, yeah, Clayton doesn't seem to be on the call, but we can push this forward. I think that this is a pretty common problem, so I think it would be useful to have support for this in the long term in Kubernetes. We have a fix for the immediate issue, so we can take our time and try to pick an optimal solution.
All right, so this was the discussion about how are you going to handle it, what do we really want to have happen between
Yeah,
you
exactly.
and the intersection, and similar to us, you guys are going to go down a path of you're on the node. If you want to act like the node, you use the node credentials because you're already effectively root here, and if you want to act like something else, you can act like your service account using a different client, right?
Exactly. Do you have any advice for us?
Well, it's not as hard as it sounds with different client sets. It'll be okay. Jordan's lived through it once before.
I think we were planning on just giving the kubelet the permission that it needs for the various things that are kind of global, and hopefully we don't run into any weird situations where we're overgranting kubelet, although that's generally
once you have a pod on the kubelet that has the ability to do a thing,
there's no fundamental
effectively got it.
Yeah.
I don't think there's a difference in security profile.
Yeah, so we are not giving up on node scope daemon sets. I want to see this feature make it in.
Yeah.
All right, did anyone else have any last minute comments before we move on to the next item? All right, Patrick, I see you're on the call now. Talk about dynamic audit you wanted to talk about?
Yeah, so we're hoping to get this into beta this release. We kind of filed some issues away in that umbrella issue I've listed there. We kind of talked that maybe some of these didn't need to be done before beta. My new overlords have me very busy, so I'm just trying to figure out what needs to be done kind of out of that issue list to bring it to beta. It might help to open that too. So like I know we had talked about the like the policy piece. Is everyone comfortable waiting? That might take a while to get. Are people comfortable with it going to beta without having that finished?
I'm trying to remember if there was a clear roadmap to add that while it was in beta. And
Yeah, I thought we were gonna do that. Yeah, just before GA. I just want to make sure we're all kind of on the same page on that.
My two thoughts on that are if dynamic audit goes to beta without policy, then I think the policy needs to be treated as a new feature. It's a big enough change to it that it would require a separate rollout. My only concern with going to beta without policy support is the inability to filter out sensitive information from the audit logs.
That's a good point. Yeah.
So like without it, there's not any way to say like, I don't want to actually send secret data to the audit endpoint.
Yeah, that's a good point. Yeah.
You know, we do have the like ability to have some sort of proxy that does that filtering for you.
But you are still emitting it.
Yeah.
was the pull request to flush out the policy changes, was that making progress, or?
Yeah, it's making some progress. It's just kind of slow. I probably haven't been on it as much as I need to. It's just been super busy. So I can kind of lean on that some more. It seems like we're kind of getting there. So we could probably shoot for it. It just kind of, a lot of that kind of depends on how much review time Daniel has, because he's kind of the primary reviewer on that.
Okay. For the scalability tests and the buffers, like the performance aspects of it, typically for features, we do scale testing like between beta and GA.
Okay.
But for this one, I can't remember if this is enabled, does it affect the current audit logging path? Like, what we want to avoid is regressing a feature that's already GA, right? So like today, there are clusters that have audit logging enabled and they're dumping to a log or dumping to an existing webhook. And if I recall correctly, enabling this like move some copy stuff around and like change the performance characteristics of what was already there.
Yeah,
right?
that's accurate. Yeah.
So like I said, normally we would do scalability tests between beta and GA, but if enabling this feature would regress performance on a feature we already have, then we need to at least measure that and like understand what would this do to the existing feature.
Is there like a doc on how I would do that, or what's expected there, or anything, or is it just kind of like what do I need to do there?
Like methodology for scale testing?
Yeah, like do I need to like open an issue and just like post the results there, or?
It kind of depends on the scale of the feature. Some things that are a component that's pretty self-contained, you can do like a Go benchmark on, and if you can capture sort of the full life cycle, and then test it, benchmark it without your feature and with your feature, and maybe with policies of different complexity and verbosity.
Okay.
I'm given how much of the stack you would have to run to exercise this, I'm not sure a Go benchmark would capture everything, but it might. I know Clayton had set up some that exercised the REST handling stack and like set everything up and then cleared time, recorded times and memory stuff, and then benchmarked stuff. So that's like the easiest one to do because you don't have to spend a lot up. And the other end of the spectrum is like if this would show up in our scalability tests, which for this it probably would. So checking with the scalability team to see if they have audit enabled in our scale tests. And for that, there's not a, you can run some of those as pre-submits, but there's not a great way beyond like enable it by default and then watch the scale tests on master to see if there are regressions. But reaching out to the scalability team to see what is enabled for audit. So those are kind of the two ends of the spectrum.
Okay, like an integration test for that, do you think that would work? Like an integration benchmark, because it is pretty localized to the API server, for at least a piece of it?
I'm not actually sure if we have integration benchmarks. I'm not sure if anyone else knows.
I'm not aware of any. It's a little bit weird because the integration API server is wired oddly.
Yeah. I don't know. You could always be the first, and I'd be curious to see your results. Most of the Go benchmarks I'm familiar with are like unit test level benchmarks. So
okay.
So yeah. In this case, I think because it does interact with an existing feature, I think we do need to at least prove that when you don't have any webhooks registered, or you kind of have the default configuration, you're not going to impact performance by turning this on.
Okay, I think that's good.
I just want to make sure that I am correctly saying that webhook authentication will be required before beta, since it affects how we would actually write the other end of how this works.
Yeah, and this was just bringing this to parity with the existing webhooks. This was not inventing a new registration system.
And that's all kind of set in GA now, right? As far as how we're doing that?
We are not planning to enhance the current system for V1 GA of webhooks. If we wanted to add like an additional authentication mechanism, that would be a post-GA feature. Yeah.
Okay. So what does that mean for this with the dynamic stuff then? I think it supports the client already that's there.
Yeah, I'm not sure it was wired the same credential builder. I'm not sure it was wired through. I think you had a pull request to add it, but it hadn't made it in yet.
Okay, let me just double check the auth on that.
The webhook versioning, I'm just running down the rest of the list. Webhook versioning definitely needs to be in. That's how we let people tell us what versions they accept.
That's an easy one, yeah.
And then I think the last one is just the mechanics of actually enabling it. So most of those I think are required. The complete policy, I would like to see it, especially because of what Tim brought up with like you kind of have to shape your static policy oddly and constrain it if you don't want to emit like these sensitive resources.
Yeah, I can see the concern there. Yeah. Okay, I'll lean on that and see if we can make some progress there quick.
And so I think the policy and the scalability are going to be the two that are probably going to take the most time. So if you want to start on those early.
Yeah.
And okay. The others I expect will be fairly contained.
Okay, cool. Well, thank you. Appreciate it.
All right, let's see what we got next on the agenda. We're done with the agenda. Time to look at bugs. Hey, one.
Yeah, I read that. I think it's unactionable.
Is this a question about like ingress? Is this more of a networking like question about the Nginx ingress controller in particular? I think it is. I'm going to reroute this to the Nginx ingress repo.
Yeah, I think that's a good call.
All right, that's easy. What is the general set of action items for the these are just unprioritized for this line. We'll just go down in this order.
So some of them may not even belong to SIG Auth.
Yeah.
So
I
a
think
good first check is, does this make sense for us to own?
this is just the cloud provider stuff. I think that's why this landed with us, because removing cloud providers has some impact to the authentication plugins that are cloud provider specific. Although I don't think there's actually very much dependency between package cloud provider and the libraries in client Go. So I think moving cloud provider would actually remove most of that code, but that is just a guess. I haven't actually validated that. Other than that, I didn't see really a relation with, I guess credential provider rework. So that's for Kubelet, or Kubelet Stalker credential provider for image pulls. Yeah, I don't think that we have anybody looking at changing or modifying credential providers other than I saw that, but we were going to remove one recently. Yeah, I don't know. Jordan, what do you think we should do with this, ones like these?
There is a separate issue for dropping, like, handling credential providers.
Mm-hmm.
I think this is probably not a great umbrella issue. Like it kind of wraps up a lot of other things that are in progress, and we shouldn't spend time short term trying to get package sizes smaller of things that work is going on to take out entirely. So
yeah, I agree with that assessment.
Okay. I will comment and take SIG Auth off of there.
Yay. All right, I guess. Hey, PSP probably belongs to us.
That's assigned. Let's just give it a priority important soon. Since people might be using that feature now, and we want the docs to be right. So.
There's a dash between there. Right? I hope that's right. All right. Allow use of encrypted features.
I know Alex was looking at this. I think this is probably backlog.
Yeah. Maybe we should just assign. Oh, it already is assigned. Yeah.
It's already assigned. Yeah. So this is issues that clearly are related to SIG Auth stuff that have someone assigned, but don't have a priority yet. And so to help us make sure we're kind of going in the right priority order, what we're just doing here is making sure it belongs to us and then adding a priority. So I think backlog is probably where this belongs. And if the person who is assigned has different thoughts, they are free to change that. But we just want to kind of do a quick initial placement.
feel like I remember this one, and I thought Jordan said just make it a better number.
We were going to try to do heuristics instead of a config knob.
Yeah.
What do you think, Mike? Important long term? Or important soon?
Yeah, that seems fine. I hate adding configuration.
Yeah, I wouldn't.
But
But I think we can be smarter than.
yeah.
Wait, did you guys say long term or short term? Is what you wanted?
Important long term. Until we get reports that people are having issues.
From just as a calibration, important, critical, urgent is basically like you shouldn't be working on anything else. Important soon is it should be fixed in the current release. Important long term is it should be fixed, and backlog is like things that we will work on once we finish all the other important things.
The thing we will work on when we are ready to retire.
No, I keep those in a different repo.
Ah, excellent. But where's the priority I can give to my intern?
Awaiting more evidence.
So I know, Mike, you and Jordan had reviewed the work that someone had worked on for this.
Oh, this is done, or is it? Why is it?
Well, let's see. We didn't. The part that I remember not being done is this part, like how do you opt out of?
Oh yeah, never mind. Yeah, that's gonna be a.
And the related bit is like, you know, go get rid of those secrets sitting around for your root controllers.
Yeah, I don't think that either of those are going to be ready in the next couple releases to actually implement.
Yeah.
I mean, the key benefit was getting better resilience and making sure the credentials we were actually using were short-lived. That's been done. The opt-out and the cleanup, I think, are distinct things that we want to do generally beyond just this. So I would probably split those out and go ahead and close this one and reference the individual items for the opt-out and the cleanup.
Do you want 3 and 4 to be distinct issues or just one issue for those?
One for opting out, and part of that work would be to make this opt-out, and one for cleaning up.
Okay, that's good. I can do that. Mike, I assume you have some opinions.
Long term, probably.
Mm-hmm.
It's got punted, you mentioned.
Yeah. I would say either soon or long term. I guess long term, because it's not 115.
My browser, I can't actually come. Just hates me.
This is really just an experiment to see how long we can keep 15 people on a call watching us clicking through GitHub issues.
Yeah, I'm impressed.
Long term, I'll go update it afterwards to see if my tabs decide. I think my browser's about to collapse on the file.
Hang on, I was here waiting for promote CSR API out of beta. You can't stop just before mine.
Just because you have a personal stake in that one, David, does not make it more important.
What is your stake in that one?
It's not so much a stake in seeing that one move. I am concerned about how we describe to people the way they should and can and cannot trust the signatures, right? So now I've seen people in clusters saying, I think it's my service account token ca.cert, and I'll be able to terminate every CSR client cert. And I know that's not the case. So that was one that I wanted to make sure was on the promote out of GA list, that we come out and make an explicit statement.
Yeah, if you want to throw that in the a comment in that issue, it's definitely on my radar for that. But if it's not already in there, go ahead and add it as a comment.
Okay.
Yeah, backlog.
Backlog, I want this.
I want it too, but
Unless I want it translates to, I'm going to go build it right now.
I know.
Backlog.
Not necessarily far off, though. You'd be open to that?
this one?
Yeah.
Oh, absolutely.
Okay.
I think there's strong desire for this across various interested parties.
All the CSR ones, I would put to long term. I had those three open in a tab. I was planning to collapse them into a single issue and gather the items. So I'll still try to do that just to get our numbers down. Stop making people look at 3 issues to figure out what's going on with one thing.
I thought we already did this, but maybe I'm not.
I think Stefan wanted this.
Yeah, we wanted it. It is still on my list. That one was listed long term, right?
It's not prioritized. Long term makes sense.
Yeah.
I wonder what a metadata policy is.
Yeah.
Is this saying we should have a generic, like, flag that does different things in different environments to lock down metadata servers?
I mean, there's a proposal on metadata policy that is actually merged in the contributors repo. I don't think that it's close to being implementable. And I don't know.
What is exactly meant when you say metadata policy?
Like control over what annotations and labels you can put on things.
Oh, okay, so object meta.
Yeah.
I would say awaiting more evidence for this one.
Yeah.
Especially with kind of, we're going to start pushing in the direction of more kind of generic policy mechanisms out of tree.
Is there a label for awaiting more evidence?
There is, shockingly. Sometimes we tell little stories in our label names.
Like, is it literally priority awaiting more evidence?
I think so.
I guess so, yeah, if I did something strange. Yep, it was happy with that. PSP for Windows.
I think this is probably also awaiting more evidence. We're still working through like what the Windows specific pod fields are. And until we know more about that, it's not clear what pod security policy would do with those. Like most of the things that pod security policy does, like, oh, you can run as a UID in this range. Like, well, Windows doesn't have UIDs. It has like string usernames. Yeah. I thought there was a pull request open to add this. Did it not get merged yet? You can call that priority important long-term and add me as well. This was just adding flags to the config command that lets you set exec options. So it's like a nice to have.
Sounds good.
Long-term.
Yeah.
Oh, actually, hang on.
Actually, what is actually the plan for when you add random extensions?
You ignore them if you don't know what they mean in the signer.
I mean, and different signers do different things. Like even ones they understand. Like you can say, nah, I'm not going to let you like do this extension. Part of that, what we do with that and how we communicate that, and whether someone who's requesting a cert can express like, if you're not going to give me the extensions I ask for, don't even bother giving me a cert. Like that is what we have to, part of what we have to nail down with the V1 API. Like it kind of sucks to have an API where you're like, give me a cert, and you get back a cert, and you're like, is this what I asked for? And it's like, I don't know, maybe. So yeah.
All right. You want a long term for this one too, right?
Yeah.
And you open this one.
I hadn't seen this one.
Trying to remember what this was.
Yeah. We have a bunch of things that run in a cluster that are sometimes components that we own or like system components, and they have no way to talk to each other and do server auth. So that's how this originally started. And
is this the one that had like the custom TLS, like non-hostname TLS server authentication?
Indeed, it is.
That's why I forgot about this. I blocked it out.
Yeah.
Wait, what?
Yeah.
TLS doesn't work. It's broken. Specifically, a host name validation within the cluster is not very helpful, especially when you know the service account that you expect to be on the other side. It's a much better thing to validate than the host name that you use to access the service. So the idea is replacing that host name validation with, I'm speaking to this VIP. I expect this Kubernetes service account to be the backend. I'm going to validate that expectation instead of validating the host name. That's the diff. And then because we would only be putting service account names in serving certificates, it would be much easier for us to create some automatic approval process to assign those for in-cluster TLS.
I have to turn on my video to give the face.
Well, so the problem is,
So I guess I can certainly see if I can verify exactly who I'm talking to because I know exactly who it is. Maybe.
This feels like a great use case for custom CSR signers. Like to be able to use the CSR API, but then request like a special wacky signer and have it do special wacky things and issue a cert that you use in a special wacky way.
And we're not saying it's bad. We're just saying it's different.
it is. Yep. Backlog, awaiting more evidence.
Yeah. Yeah.
So I think that the thing that is really kind of a common pain point that this could potentially help with is some automatic provisioning of serving certificates for webhooks and aggregated APIs.
Yeah, I think this would be interesting to build, like as a make a secret and annotate it or label it or something, like some CRD that says I want a serving cert, and then this thing like uses the CSR API to satisfy that. Stuffed it into a secret, and then you mount it in. So the surface area from a consumer's perspective is like, I want a serving cert. When it's ready, mount it in and start me.
Yeah. This certainly could be built outside, but it doesn't solve the pain of setting up an aggregated API or a webhook until the Cube API servers client supports that type of validation.
It could entirely be built externally, and you can actually have a controller that writes those pieces in, right?
Oh, he's saying unless it supports the weird TLS, like not hostname based TLS validation.
Yeah.
I concur with backlog or awaiting more evidence.
Yeah.
All right.
If you click through to the issue linked at the top of that one, it has a bit more background on the problem that this was originally motivating this around the model where you have a bunch of node or a bunch of daemon sets that need to communicate with a control plane level pod, and how do we do all of this secure communication between those pieces?
Is that a flattened three-dimensional matrix? I like it. I don't know what it's saying, but I like it. Yeah. Okay.
At least for these ones, they could be built without supporting the API server.
Yep.
So that might be worth just starting there at some point.
Yep.
So is this the thing we even want to do?
Kind of, yeah. I mean, this is a weird division between SIG Auth and SIG API machinery. So we're both on there, and nobody's looking at it. But yeah, I mean, things that we represent in our kube config file, we really would like the client libraries in all the languages, at least the extension ones like exec, to be able to make use of. I think before we go out and add this, we should probably look at getting the exec API version to v1. If we have experience with it and people are using it and there aren't major changes we need to make, then I would probably get it to v1 and then go roll it out to the clients, so that instead of doing a rollout and then trying to roll out multiple version support.
This is kind of a pretty complex problem to solve sustainably.
Which aspect?
Making sure that the non-Go clients have some consistency with feature compatibility, even if it's eventual consistency. I don't even, so I think we have a Python one. Is there an official Java one? We do.
There's a lot of
.NET, apparently, JavaScript.
Yeah.
There's a lot of them. There were supposed to be like bronze, silver, gold levels of compatibility. It was all in Mehdi's doc, which he probably took to Uber with him. But how many actually supported it? I'm not sure.
Yeah, and then what's the expectation for people who made a change in Go, the client Go? Currently, the expectation is don't worry about it. You may not even know that these things exist.
That's certainly how our tests are set up.
All right, TBD. I want to plan from the API machinery SIG on how to do this long term.
Okay. I don't know the plan is likely to get much better than feel free to notify everyone there's this new capability.
Yeah. Maybe that's it. Maybe it's document your change in the client guide or whatever that document is.
Yeah.
Backlog appropriate for this?
Yeah.
Or do you guys want to long term?
Yeah. Backlog help wanted.
Does it literally help dash wanted? I don't think I've ever used this label. Try it. What's the worst that can happen?
Prow commands.
I didn't like the last one.
Good dash first dash issue.
If there was ever any doubt as to who the true masters were, it is the bots.
Yeah.
We will dance and say whatever they want.
More policies.
Yeah, so this is sort of touching some of the work of policy. This should definitely have the policy area or work group on it. For like in-tree work, I would say this is backlog. I think a lot of work on this topic is going on out of tree, like with the different admission plugins that are being written. It's definitely not front of mind for stuff we're looking at doing in tree.
I actually think it's going to be pretty hard to implement this policy out of tree as an admission plugin because of how complicated the logic is on scheduling constraints. There's like very many ways to express different ways to express the same thing, which makes it hard to sort of logically validate an admission.
And if we want any kubelet admission time for some hard constraints like dedicated nodes, I don't know if that is desirable, but it sounds like it might be.
Maybe I misread the issue. I thought this was purely talking about what goes on pods.
Yeah, this replaced we need authorization on tolerations issue.
I mean, the two controls we have around this today are admission, the alpha admission tokens.
You're right. I guess you're right.
I mean, I don't disagree that it's hard to express, but I don't know that it's easier to express in tree.
Well, I think the proposal that I presented to Bobby and Yassine a while ago, I'm not sure if this got written up into a KEP or something, is to do something similar to what we did with runtime class scheduling. To say, like, here's a policy that rather than applying it at admission time, you apply it at scheduling time. And say, basically, intersect these scheduling rules with the scheduling rules on the pod to say, like, these are the only places this pod is allowed to be scheduled.
Mm. Do you want to take a stab at a priority on this? And
I don't disagree with the priority.
Oh, okay. Maybe delete the out of tree bit and just give it to the work log and set backlog. Okay. We're out of time. As a reminder, if you have issues that are unprioritized, feel free to put initial priorities on them. That helps us get a better picture across all our issues so we can kind of pull out the ones that are critical or important over backlog. So.
That was quite enjoyable.
Mike, there's something wrong.
It was more fun than reviewing KEPs for 48 hours. I will say that.
All right, bye, guys.
Yeah.
Thanks, guys.